You're with the Retro Hour podcast, and we're here today joined by Alex Johansson. And Alex is from ALYO Games. He's created some pretty amazing, innovative games, and you know, he's got alternative controllers, which is a whole scene that we're going to be discussing. Some of these games are really experimental, really good fun. I met him when he was showing me Morse, which is the new game that he's created using Morse code, which is a lost art, absolutely fantastic. And there's going to be some great talk on here because, you know, he's award-winning and an experimental designer and educator. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm grand. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Really excited to chat about stuff, chat about Morse, chat about weird controllers. Yeah, it's going to be great.
It's really interesting, this whole alt control scene, alternative controllers. But first, we're going to ask you about your first gaming experience. So what's the first kind of game that stood out to you?
I think one of my first memories was one of those penguin slide toys where you had like the little penguins that went up the chute and then went down the ski run. But I think probably the first like formative games experience was my dad, who was a DT teacher and an IT teacher, who sat me down for playing Descent, and he put me in a cardboard box, shoved LEDs through the side that he wired up, and sat me down with a joystick and had me play it on like a projector that he'd managed to borrow from work, which, it was like, as you can imagine, based on the work that I do now, quite a formative experience. And I've just loved kind of tactile play since then. And that was a real good one.
So you basically made Descent into an even more immersive experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you just kind of cut a hole in the front of the box. I was just kind of peeking out with like a ring of LEDs around me, which was lovely.
Yeah, Descent, incredible game. Celebrated his 30th birthday this month as well. So obviously been in gaming for a while, Alex. I mean, talking about, you know, systems that you had there. I mean, were you a computer or console kid kind of growing up?
So basically started out with PC. Again, because my dad was an IT teacher, we had access to a computer from home, but eventually ended up moving into console because my dad just got sick of me bringing home CDs that just wouldn't work on our computer. And it was still at the time where you couldn't really get refunds for PC games once you'd install them. So, putting me on a console was a much worked out a cheaper alternative. And admittedly, on the arcade side of things, I think my first console was Xbox, so quite late on. But I've kind of loved playing games in the time since then. Got access to like a Dreamcast, and even now I still kind of meet up with my mates Jack, Jordan, and Tom to play wacky races on the Dreamcast every once in a while, which is a fantastic racing game, made in Sheffield as well. So would recommend.
I think they used to be quite experimental with alternative controllers. Like one was the Sega Bass fishing rod that I remember, and also they had DJ Hero and DDR, of course, Dance Dance Revolution, and the Power Glove. What are your kind of favorite big commercial alternative controllers that came out?
Well, I do like the Dance Dance Revolution mats. I was never any good at using them. I have previously hacked them to pieces and turned them into controllers themselves. I feel like it's kind of a genuine shame that we've moved away from this kind of experimental, more kind of approachable design that used to exist in things like arcades and used to exist in all sorts of, you know, public settings. I think some of my favorites is the kind of tactile feel of Tempest. Some ones that are a bit off the beaten path, but we'll go into a bit later. There's an arcade in Brooklyn called Wonderville that's full of all sorts of very weird games controllers, such as a one called Black Emperor, which is a motorbike game that you operate by rolling a wheel backwards and forwards. And then the other one I was going to mention was Tim Hunkin's work, which is these fantastic arcades that are all animatronic and just have these like amazing tactile bespoke interfaces. And yeah, I just love that tactile novel feel that you get. And, you know, a lot of the public absolutely love them as well.
You're right about Tempest as well, because it's got the super zapper knob on Tempest, doesn't it? It's got really distinctive feel to it as well. But it's really strange because whenever I play Tempest, like on anything else, I just really miss that knob. It just felt like, you know, the game was obviously designed for that. So some games definitely fit with the those odd control mechanisms.
100%. It's one of those that like, I kind of almost feel like a lot of modern players don't realize what they're missing. Like the touch is this whole sense that just isn't properly engaged with conventional inputs or kind of modern inputs. And I don't know. I'm always kind of advocating for people to kind of take a note from those previous installations and things like that.
I love it when people kind of mess about with them, hack them. So I saw, you know, people trying to complete Mario on the DDR mat, or, you know, playing something with the Guitar Hero controller, you know, something that is not originally meant to be used for.
I got to see, you mentioned DJ Hero. I got to see someone, I can't remember who it was. I got to see someone perform beating, I think it was Resident Evil 3 on a DJ Hero set. I think it might have even been two simultaneously. So I think it was kind of turning the decks for each axis. And but one of the things that infuriated me about that, presentation was that it was done in front of a big audience, and, you know, it almost looked like a gig. But the thing that was really annoying is they didn't actually show a shot of the hands to see what they were doing. So, you know, like some DJs, you couldn't actually tell if he was being, you know, legitimate or not. But yeah,
a pre-mixed set.
You know, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he could just be playing in front of footage. Not to slander him, but just tip for next time.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, if we're talking about, you know, something that is still one of the most popular controllers in 2025, obviously on PC gaming, the QWERTY keyboard, which we're looking at this, that was established in 1868. I mean, do you think that's deserved its longevity, or do you think it's about time that we grew out of the QWERTY keyboard?
I mean, what I would say is it's an approachable interface, which, like my grandma, for example, she's 90, 95, 96. Oh gosh, that's on recording now. She's in her 90s. And she otherwise isn't particularly interested in engaging with technology, but she was a typist. So she is able to just write proficiently using keyboard. And while she doesn't engage with computers, like there's a lot of people that have that proficiency with keyboards. So I guess it's approachable in that way. But yeah, it's a lot of extra buttons and might be intimidating for people who don't know anything about computer games. So, not to sound like I'm flogging a dead horse, but yeah, I don't know. There's enough cheap alternatives out there for building other weird controllers that I'd encourage any game developers tuning in to branch out.
Well, I was wondering about your journey then. Like, how did you get started in the world of indie games, and what projects were you initially working on?
So my background came from a game design course. So I kind of did like a kind of modern, semi kind of traditional route. Prior to, probably the 2010s, people came in from lots of different routes, but that's when they started bringing games courses. The real thing that set me down the path of doing games development was going to a summer camp in upstate New York and teaching games development to kids. And I basically blagged the job. I didn't know how to code at the time. Originally went for a mountain biking role, which would have involved spending lots of time in the sunshine and exercising. And instead I was in a windowless, air-conditioned room teaching kids how to code. And I did that for about 3 or 4 summers. I think at the end of having done it, had about 500 kids come and go, building, games that they took home on CDs at the time. And yeah, in the process of doing that, I learned tons about how to code. And from there, took it upon myself to build some of my own stuff. And funnily enough, one of the games that I'm going to be talking about today was started around that time that I got into doing games development. But in the time since, I've released 6-7 commercial titles. I also kind of got the bug for doing weird games controllers, so I've exhibited games, weird interfaces around the world. And yeah, I also love teaching. I kept that element with me. And yeah, I've taught young and old. It's just great fun. I love being able to not only show people things of wonder in the form of weird controllers, but then also be like, here are tools how to make your own games and make some weird stuff to operate them with.
It's interesting as well, because you think, if you went back 20 years ago, it felt like there was a real kind of, the bedroom programmer scene had kind of faded away. And before, indie games really saw a big resurgence. I mean, do you think, have you kind of rode that kind of the wave of indie games and how popular they've become in like the last couple of decades? And has that helped awareness, do you think, then, and getting out in front of new people?
I think... So the indie space and games generally are in a bit of a weird spot. I'm sure you've had people on the podcast talk about it, but there's obviously the current industry slump that's causing a lot of issues. We obviously saw like a big swell of releases and enthusiasm in the early 2010s, which has kind of for the most part dissipated, and it's pretty hard at the moment to be an independent developer. Yeah, I managed to kind of release, a bunch of titles. Weirdly, you've picked a very strange time for me to be on the podcast, because I am in the process of transitioning out of conventional games development, in that I'm going to be pivoting to designing games experiences for over 65s and people with dementia, which, yeah, is an underserved audience, and undoubtedly an audience of deserving of play. And I'm sure of, where games are at now, over 50 years, you're going to have people within those audiences moving into those age brackets.
Well, we've got some questions later about that as well. But first, tell us about the alt control subculture as well. And I noticed it when I saw a video on GDC as well that have a alt control section. Would you like to go along, and have you been to any alt control events?
Yes, so I am a staunch advocate for alt control. So for anyone who's unfamiliar, alt control is short for alternative controllers, which is basically a small but active subculture, which is focused around subverting conventional controllers, coming up with either unusual ways of using existing controllers, like, for example, the DJ Hero one I referenced, having controllers that are games in themselves, or, in the case of what I've been doing, designing unusual controllers for conventional games. And I just love doing it. And you just get to see so much interesting, innovative things. The thing that I particularly enjoy is using existing objects. So using things that people find otherwise approachable or familiar to interact with, whether that's like a hole punch or a foot pedal, or a pair of like chicken wings or something like that. Just there's certain things that translate well to operate games with, and I think probably one of the best places that I would love to see more alternative controllers is games expos like EGX or other major events, because when you look across the showroom floor, you referred to keyboards before, you see this ocean of keyboards and mice and gamepads, and when people come to these events, they want something of spectacle. They don't just want to have the experience that they're going to have at home. It'd be like going to a gig and having the band have no pyrotechnics or any of that stuff. And I've been doing alternative controllers for about 12 years now, and the thing that I think it's particularly good for is reaching people that otherwise wouldn't engage with games. Because to a lot of, the general public, games controllers can be quite unfamiliar or intimidating. Some of the examples of things I've built previously that cut through to people. I did a Muppet Boxing game previously where you physically kind of shove your hand up the butt of the Muppet and then use its arm to punch your opponent with. So Muppet Boxing. I did a controller which was pre-pandemic called Vaccination, where you had like a kind of operation style board that you used a syringe as your controller, that you were injecting medicine into a patient. And just those both used interfaces that people were familiar with, and you saw a lot of people who were coming along to those events otherwise chaperoning game enthusiasts who really loved it. And I love reaching those people. Giving people their first experiences of games is just the best.
I'm interested to learn a bit more about this Muppet Boxing game, because actually there's a version of it you can play on your website if you've got Adobe Flash installed, which being a retro podcast, I love that. Space Rages. So tell us a bit more about where this idea came from then, and how exactly did it work? And I imagine people actually fighting with puppets, were they getting damaged all the time? Did you have to patch them up between rounds?
Oh, yes. So this is one of the two puppets that was kind of developed. So I worked with two artists, Tyler Giordano and Alex Borowski in Boston in the US. And we made these horrendous looking Muppet characters. For anyone
Describe
who's
what
not
they look like for people that are on audio only, yeah.
Of course, yeah. So basically this thing is this canvas painted monstrosity covered in plasters from where its face has been pulverized. It's got its brain sticking out of its head and a little child alien in a little pouch on its front. And in terms of how the controller works, you've got, in the style of the Muppets, you've got the kind of articulating arm that comes out. There's got a little metal contact on the front of it. And when you punch the opponent's face, which has little metal sensors on the front of it, it triggers input on certain locations. So if you hit the alien in the mouth or the tongue, it'll knock off chunks of their face. And we showed that at EGX. It must be about 7-8 years ago. And it almost worked out like a performance art because people really went to town when they were fighting each other, and it reached a point where the fabric started splitting. And basically in the style of something like Rocky, I was effectively the coach, having to patch them up between rounds, and managed to get a hold of some fabric plasters. So I was physically resealing their eyebrows and lips and stuff. I think there was one point where one of the eye of one of them flew off into the crowd and got lost. So I had to run and grab some spare metal contacts from a local shop. It was real kind of almost performance art. But that project, I think it took us 2-3 weeks to build, and it was great. And the thing that was also nice was Alex and Tyler were both kind of were kind of traditional artists. Neither of them had played games before, so neither of them really had any gauge of what games were meant to be. So it just meant we came up with something that was really out there. And wonderful project.
I did mention that you can play a lot of your games on your website via Flash. I mean, you think Flash as a medium? I mean, obviously it's people have got to really find a browser that supports it these days, and it often doesn't work on mobile. Do you find, what's kind of history with Flash development then? And does that language kind of work well for what you do?
I absolutely love Flash, and I really lament its death. I think it's one of those, when you're talking about indie development, I think that was one of the kind of the peaks of games development. I think now, there's this expectation nowadays that, to do indie development, you've got to build something that is, 3 to 5 hours long. It's got to cost $100,000 or, these silly numbers. And back then you could just build some scrappy art project in an afternoon, fling it online, get, lots, a response from online. It was very democratized. There was almost like a feel that anyone could make games in a way that, and to have that reach audiences in a way that just hasn't existed, and I would argue hasn't existed since. You can use things like Steam, but there just are much more barriers to distributing games than there used to be then. I think from a games preservation perspective, it's honestly shocking that like 20 years of games history was allowed to basically be wiped out of compatibility. Obviously, I understand the security concerns, but there should have been a more concerted effort to preserve them. I mean, websites like Newgrounds have done a good job of like trying to kind of fight for that and to use like adapters and plugins to convert them to, I think it's to HTML5. I recently realized that all my games were still playable, which was a pleasant surprise. But I love Flash games. The other thing to mention as well, which is quite fun, is I managed to go quite far beyond when Flash was decommissioned in showing games at expos. I think it was even as late as 2019 or something. I was showing games built in Flash. At major games conferences, and no one batted an eyelid. Just because the tool I use, Stencil, it's just a game engine that has Flash export. So, and it's just quick. It's just quick and easy to handle. I don't know. I'm gutted it's gone.
Well, one game that you mentioned there was Vaccination, and this looked mad. It looked like, I was watching videos of it. It looked like a huge game of Operation where you had 2 people involved and an EpiPen as kind of one of the controllers. Explain that project and your kind of influences with it.
Sure. So the project was designed by me and Katie Marshall. I handled the kind of, we basically worked on the project. I think it was the Alt Control Jam. So that was effectively build a games controller and a game in a weekend. We built this like tiny laser cut prototype of the game, and we submitted it to Alt Control GDC, which is one of the main games exhibitions for alternative controllers in San Francisco. And we built like a giant version of it. Katie handled a lot of the fabrication, and I did the kind of initial prototyping and then did the digital side of things. And we toured it around the world. It ended up in I think it's Games Science Museum in Berlin. And ironically, during the pandemic, that place unfortunately shut. And basically the last surviving copy of it disappeared when that place closed. So technically Vaccination was killed by the pandemic. I lament the loss of that installation, but it was great. And like the version that we had, you had like LEDs built into the injector, so you could see how much medicine you had left when you were kind of injecting around the body. To briefly explain how it works, one person navigates around the inside of kind of like on a scan of the body. So you have like a monitor off to the side with a joystick, and you're looking for where infection is kind of spreading through the body. And you advise the other person where to inject medicine and what color of medicine to, so like blue medicine in the leg or, yellow medicine in the shoulder, that kind of thing. And went down really well with the public.
I hear you showed it at a medical conference as well.
Yes. So we had a version of it sent to I think it was a medical conference in Germany, if I remember correctly. I unfortunately didn't get to go for that. I think we did it as kind of like a commission. Like showing installations in those kinds of niche environments. The game was not medically accurate. So I assume there will have been some question marks around the legitimacy of it as a game or an educational tool, but it was good fun.
I was wondering what your views on like adaptive controllers are. I know they can be adapted and changed quite well for helping users with disabilities and restrictions from playing. But do you think they could be a bit more innovative as well?
I think, the recent advances of the adaptive controller and Sony's equivalent is great. I think it's a real positive step in the right direction, and the fact that they've taken the hit to mass manufacture these is great. The thing that there's two things. I think there's building controllers to make people effectively compatible with conventional gaming. And then the next step is building games specifically for those audiences. So rather than just adapting them to engage with actual games, sitting down with them and being like, what games would suit your needs, and what games would, like how can we design this game from the ground up to accommodate your needs? And then the other element that I think could see improvement is the approachability of controllers. So whilst the adaptive controller is much more approachable in that it's kind of the interface is blown up and made larger to interact with, it's still a kind of relatively alien object to interact with. Like, it doesn't have any grounding in the real world. One of the things that I kind of advocate for quite substantially is approachable design. So that kind of complements accessible design in that using common objects that are in the real world as interfaces allows you to reach people who otherwise just wouldn't engage with games. So accessible design is how to help people who are engaged. Approachable design is how to reach people who aren't engaged. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think talking about people who aren't engaged, underserved communities you mentioned earlier, and I was just wondering, like, what kind of areas you think are underserved in gaming. There's a very kind of strict, tight group that they aim for. You've got the kind of adult gamers, after work relaxing, and then you've got the really young gamers as well.
Sure. So the going off the back of organizations like Special Effect and Everyone Can, that do fantastic work around like designing accessible controllers for individuals, I think a natural next step, and I would argue like the elephant in the room when it comes to games development and kind of the industry, like effectively a time bomb in the middle of the games industry, is older audiences. Because obviously as you get older, like you're going to experience more disabilities. So, whether it's arthritis, like inability to see or hear, or things like dementia. So, there are like using the tools that, those organizations have designed, or frameworks for engaging people with disabilities. You could, I think, can adapt those relatively easily to engage older audiences. And like that's kind of where I want to pivot my career after I finish my kind of last major commercial project, Morse. And beyond that as well, generally, like, there's this it already existed as a term, but the thing that I kind of want to try and aim to address with my work is what's, is play inequality. So like, how do you bring play to audiences who just otherwise don't engage with games, bring it to public spaces, or kind of, deprived areas. And as I said, places like care homes, I think, really are in like a dire need for engagement with play. And yeah, there is historical precedent for engaging the elderly in those audiences, but we can get into that.
I also guess like that older generation as well. Some of them might have played games in their youth or have memories of some of those, retro games that they used to play, and then kind of bringing them back into gaming might actually be quite therapeutic and might help out as well.
Yeah, and the thing is that I think one of my biggest frustrations around like designing games for the elderly is that we have a historical precedent for it. So, and it's not even that long ago. Like, it is that long ago in that, brace yourselves, like when the Wii came out 20 years ago, nearly.
Wow.
It was like explicitly marketed to older audiences. And in particular, it was marketed as a family console, but including grandparents as part of the family unit. And what that did was it made that representation of the elderly meant that when parents bought it for their kids, they were like, oh, let's see if it works with, grandma or granddad. And that, I don't think it's quite appreciated now how much of like a huge like shift there was, like intergenerational shift there was in terms of like older audiences playing games. And like Wii Sports, like has seen adoption since in things like care homes and, in spaces for the elderly. There was a couple, I think it was a French couple called Janine and Gilbert, and who won a Wii bowling championship in France. And she was 95 and he was 86. So, and that was like 2 years ago. So like the fact that they're still playing this game from like nearly 20 years ago, like, and winning an esports tournament shows that there is an appetite for it. Even organizations like Age UK still reference Wii Sports as like a games activity for those groups. But it's been 20 years. Like, how have we not built something to the equivalence? It's infuriating. And, it's, what I want to focus on going forwards. Because it's only going to get worse. Like, we're going to have more people who are gamers entering this age bracket. And unless we cater for them, they're just going to disengage.
We've joked before on the podcast that in 40 years when, fingers crossed we're still around and in a nursing home where we having like Doom LAN parties, but obviously, bodies willing. But yeah, you're right. It does seem like important to adapt it for people of a certain age who still want a game, but maybe physically have limitations.
Yeah, the other thing I'd mention on the actual 20 years going forwards is that I think it's something like, because people perceive games as like as a medium for the young, but the reality is we're seeing games developers dying of old age. Like it's already here. And yeah, in 20 years, I think at least in the UK, over 65s are going to outnumber under 16s. So that perception of games as games for younger audiences is going to change. And I'm excited to see what that brings. How games have changed, because we've already seen as games have matured, like how the medium has changed. And I'm sure it'll be just as interesting 20 years on from now.
Well, one game that actually has got a bit of a retro kind of vibe about it that you can play again in Flash via your website, or it's available on iOS as well, is Corporate Salmon, which has kind of got some pixel style graphics in there as well. And the description is flop to the top of a fishy financial escalator. So tell us kind of the background on this, because that game became a bit of an unexpected hit, didn't it?
Yeah, so Corporate Salmon, I think I built that project in like 6 months. I think that actually originated, when I was visiting New York. And when I think I was at this space in New York called Baby Castles, built a weird games controller, which was basically, I think I've got basically just a folded piece of paper or card that you were like flopping, opening and closing to have that motion of a flopping fish. Built the game connected to it, inspired by Wall Street. And the game did really well. I think it's at least had, about 2 million downloads at this point. And yeah, people love it. I still, unfortunately, I kind of had to, I kind of, what's the word? Stopped updating my Apple store account. So The game is, as far as I'm aware, not available anymore. But I still get people sending me messages being like, I grew up playing Corporate Salmon. Please, can you just upload it somewhere so I can play it again? I even had someone send me an actual letter to my house, which was slightly unsettling. I don't know how they managed to get a hold of my address, but they were like, please, can you upload that game again, please? And I haven't, but yeah, maybe I will at some point. I think it's coming up to the 10-year anniversary of the game, so we'll see.
It's interesting. So a lot of these games feel like they could run on retro systems. When you mentioned the Dreamcast was like a particular favorite, would you ever like do a game for the Dreamcast or anything like that?
So I guess the problem is that I think and one of my contacts in industry, he managed to get a hold of like I think it was a Dreamcast CD printer, and I think was planning to do like limited runs of like projects for Dreamcast, like limited Dreamcast publishing. I don't know what became of that, but alas, whilst I can build games, my programming skills are not amazing. And whilst I've been able to build out things on like the Playdate, for example, which is like a little kind of handheld console, for the most part, I stick to visual scripting, and that unfortunately, the tool I use, Stencil, is mobile and PC primarily. I think some people have exported and ported from it, but I'd love to try it someday. Like, it's just a lot of faff.
Yeah, the Playdate's an interesting one though, because it's like, for people that haven't seen it, it's like a handheld system, isn't it? A bit like a Game Boy, you could say, but it's got like a winch on it on the side, isn't it? Like a dial that you can turn. So I guess, again, going back to your alternative controllers, there's probably a lot of possibilities for interesting game design on there.
Yeah, you get some really cool stuff, like, because again, just having that weird interface crank on the side of it, people just come up with all sorts of different peripherals and interfaces for it. I turned the crank into a telegraph key, which seemed to go down quite well. I think I shared a video of the telegraph key working, and it kind of blew up on Twitter, which was quite nice. But again, it's just one of those things of I hope to get back to the Playdate version of Morse, but for the time being, I've just been focusing on getting the main version done. I might do like a Kickstarter or something like that for the Playdate version.
Well, talking about Morse, what a fantastic title that was. When I played it, it's something that's always been in my kind of mind, Morse code at the back of there. Like, I need to learn Morse code. And maybe it's because I'm a bit of a radio nerd, or love those films where they're kind of communicating with Morse code. But tell our listeners about it, and how you've gamified Morse code.
Sure. So, basically Morse is it's a strategy game in which you're using the lost language of Morse code. You only have two buttons to operate the game with. One is, I've got it within range, but you've got a telegraph key that you're entering more dots and dashes with, and then you have your launch button to fire down our artillery. The game looks very similar to battleships, which, because you're kind of moving around the grid using dots and dashes. And like that game, I encourage people to use it and play it with a telegraph, but you can play it with mouse and keyboard. I find it quite funny that the telegraph is roughly the same age, or in the same kind of age bracket as the keyboard. So they're kind of siblings in a way. And the project's been in development for, about 10 years on and off. Looking forward to releasing.
Well, it kind of reminded me of like Guitar Hero, but you're actually learning a skill. Guitar Hero, it's good in everything, but you're kind of playing this controller and you are faking it a little bit. With Morse, it was really interesting because I'd have to learn the actual letters, and then it would select the area in the game, and then I could fire and hit these ships. And it's also based in a war scenario as well, which seems to be really fitting.
Yeah, so the era that I kind of set the game in is in the First World War. So you're using like telegraphy to kind of call down artillery on naval ships. It's like around the time of the Battle of Jutland. And yeah, you know, you're using the same interfaces to plant mines, upgrade, and move around the grid. And it is just nice, one of those nice things that through the process of building the game, I'm now proficient at this language that once you've learnt Morse, you kind of start hearing like random taps. You know, you'll hear like a little kind of like tapping sound on like a train or something. You'll be like, is that Morse code? Or you'll see like a blinking light, and you'll just start hearing it everywhere. And I like the idea of a language that has some, like, that's known enough by people, like, or known by enough people to be kind of like a secret language, but abstracted enough that it can kind of still hold mystery. And for you to have secret benefits for knowing it. So as an example, like I previously broke an escape room because I knew Morse code. And I'm kind of amazed that the designers of the escape room hadn't factored that in, but we were able to skip like several steps of the escape room because I could just read Morse code. So yeah, you never know. I hopefully don't hear any like extreme stories, like people getting lost on mountains, or. But I'm interested to hear where Morse code being learnt comes in useful for people.
It's interesting. So I think back to when I was at school. You know, back in the 90s, we had after school club that was very generically titled Electronics Club. There was anything from, you know, messing around with computers to building little robotic kits to Lego Technics to also building small transmitters. And we actually made a little Morse code transmitter in there that would broadcast over the radio airwaves as well. And you mentioned before about this kind of connection that Morse code has with ham radio as well. I mean, have you kind of got a background in ham then? And is that like something that you think... So, I mean, it's always kind of crossed over, I think, with... particularly back in the day, like computer enthusiasts and radio enthusiasts, they were always very closely connected.
So, to be honest, my interest for like the origin for Morse, you know, ties neatly back to what I was saying earlier regarding like alternative controllers. So, I actually came up with the game by experimenting with clothes pegs. So I was like squeezing and closing a clothes peg during like a kind of alternative controller workshop, and I was like, this would make a very nice telegraph. So built a kind of really janky improvised games controller, got a telegraph working, and then I was like, I guess I'll try build a game to play this with. Came up with ... Splash, which was the original name of the title. And from there, it kind of slowly evolved into Morse. It's only really in the last year or so that I've kind of really kind of started going down the ham radio pipeline. And it's just absolutely fascinating. I think it's something like 3 million ham radio operators internationally. There's just all these this huge amount of infrastructure and communities and like massive conferences that happen. I think there's a conference in somewhere in America. I think it's something beginning with a D, like Daytona or something like that. I can't remember, but it's got like 80,000 people that turn up. It's like kind of like the mecca of ham radio, it's just bonkers. It's just this like secret world of things like with all these like there's like the sport of ham radio where people do orienteering with like Morse code, like climbing mountains or doing outdoor sports, and it's just every day brings new new directions and rabbit holes.
It's kind of where I get mega geeky here, but I used to have a friend with ham radio, and we'd tune in, listen to Morse coding competitions, because it was kind of a truly international language, and you would have people from around the world, and the speed that some of them were doing, it was absolutely horrific. It's like faster than a computer. You could just hear like have your skills improved as you've been using Morse?
Like, so one of the recent things that I've learned about Morse is that one of the easiest ways to learn it is through listening. And until recently, Morse has been predominantly visual. So I have changed that. I've added, the ability to receive messages in the game. But it seems like learning the rhythms of words in the same way that you don't speak by saying the letters individually is the way to do it. And because Morse is just using individual letters, I'm still relatively slow. But one thing that's quite interesting about ham radio is there was a big swell of people that started engaging with it around the pandemic. So basically people stuck at home looking for things to do and wanting to connect with people. And you saw this big increase of kind of Zoom groups being set up for people to improve their get their ham radio licenses, improve their kind of telegraphy proficiency. I think there's the Long Island Morse Club that does like sessions for training people in ham radio. And people are super enthusiastic about it. And I think one of the first things that I want to do once the game ships is to actually get my ham radio license and to get up to a high proficiency with Morse code. And because I've got the gear for it, but not necessarily the skills yet. But I'll get there.
It's pretty interesting as well, because I know people have done packet sending on it and stuff, and they've started to do a bit of kind of computing through ham radio as well. I was just wondering though, are you going to like do a physical edition of Morse at all? Are you going to have a controller that you can actually buy or set up yourself, or even just instructions on that?
So I guess so I've spoken about, I keep harping on about alternative controllers, but the one of the biggest barriers to them becoming less alternative and more mainstream is the kind of prohibitive cost of distribution. And personally, I love that element of them because it means that you don't get landfills full of weird games controllers, which we've had as an era in gaming. The probably millions of weird Wii Sports peripherals littering landfills. But I like the fact that for the most part, it's localized installations. But with Morse, the thing that I'm looking to prove is that you can do it at scale by using existing objects in people's lives. So I've designed a tutorial effectively of how to build a telegraph out of a nail clipper and a broken pair of mice, or kind of a broken mouse clicker. And it turns out that a nail clipper is quite a satisfying alternative to using a Morse key. And, if you want to upgrade from that, so I've done a video tutorial of how to kind of assemble that and to use it. And if you want to go that extra mile, there's already a ton of telegraph keys out there in distribution internationally that people can buy. I've already kind of started getting into the habit of buying all sorts of weird different ham radio keys. Might start being a problem if I keep going with it, because I think I've already got 6 or 7 different keys. But it's just so fascinating having all these like really durable, varied types of key, and all the calibration that comes with that. You can tell telegraph operators based on how they've like attuned their key and how they operate it. So it's very, very personal. Homebrew is a whole other rabbit hole that we could get into, which aligns quite similar with alt control.
I think it's awesome. I think, particularly, we cover, retro gaming and technology, and you don't get much more retro than Morse code and ham radio. So I think, there's definitely a big crossover there. And the fact that you're doing this in video game form as well. I think it's fantastic. So when can people expect a release of it then? And how do people play your games then? Is your website the best place to go and keep up to date with what you're doing? So Morse is going to be releasing in September. Very excited for that. The project's been on for like 10 years now. So just to get the thing finished,
I'm very, very excited for. And there is a browser version of the game available to play on the web, which is very fitting given it's not Flash, it's HTML5. And you can play the full kind of version of the game on Steam. Sorry, the demo version of the game on Steam, and then the full version in September. And there's all the kind of resources and connected information of how to build your own controller. The other thing to very quickly mention is I'm going to be taking the game to Hamfest at the start of September in Newark. If you want to come check out the installation in person, I'm very, very excited to partner with the Royal Radio Society of Great Britain. To showcase the game there. And if you're into ham radio and you want me to come to conferences near you, please get in touch, because I would love to tour the game around if possible.
Yeah, I think ham radio is awesome, so it's great to see that you're supporting that community as well. So, Alex, best of luck with it. It's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on and being our guest on the show this week.
Thanks.